So in this video, we're going to look at solving a system of equations, and we're going to use this method called substitution. All right, so basically here's what we have. We're going to have something like this: y equals negative 7x minus 1, y equals x minus 9. And we're basically being asked, what is the x and y value that completes both of these or satisfies both of these equations? So this is our solution. Our solution is an x and a y value. Okay, so first let's go over some steps. That way we can at least have a roadmap of where to go. So step one is we're going to isolate one of our variables. So isolate a variable. Like we want to make sure we have x equals or y equals, something like that. Step two is we're going to take whatever we isolate and we're going to substitute it. I'll just say sub period. So we're going to substitute that into our other equation. So whatever equation we didn't isolate, we're going to substitute either our x equals or y equals into that other equation. And then step three is we're going to solve that equation. So we're going to solve for variable. So whatever variable we have in that equation from step two, we're going to solve for that. And then step four, we're going to substitute. So I'll just say sub period. We're going to substitute what we get from step three, and we're going to take that and substitute it into one of the original, and it doesn't matter which one it is, but one of the original equations. Okay, so original equations. All right, so let me roll through that one more time. So isolate a variable, substitute that variable into the other equation, and you'll see it's x equals to some stuff. You'll take that stuff and substitute it into the equation, your other equation. And then you're going to solve for whatever variable you have left. Then once you find that value, you take that and substitute it in to one of your original equations, and then you should be left with both an x and a y. So let's look at the first problem we started with. Y equals negative 7x minus 1. Y equals x minus 9. All right, so this is our system of equations. There's two equations here, and our job is to solve this. We basically want an x and a y that's going to satisfy this system of equations. So once again, our first step is to isolate an x or a y. But if you notice, both of the y values are already isolated. However, we need to choose one. We don't need, it's not a requirement to have more than one variable isolated. So like, let's just say we want to choose the top. So the top y value is isolated, but the y value is equal to this expression. And actually, let me get rid of this. So it's equal to this expression, negative 7x minus 1. Now, if negative 7x minus 1 is equal to y, that means I can substitute all of that in for this y value. So I could rewrite this negative 7x minus 1 equals x minus 9. So all we're doing is some substitution. It's really, the reason this is called substitution is because substitution is basically what you're doing. It's pretty simple once you get the hang of it. All right, so now, if you notice, we only have x values left in our problem now. So once we solve this, we're going to have our x value. So like, well, let's go ahead and solve it, and then we'll talk more. So we're going to add 1 on each side. We need to move our variable to one side, so we're going to subtract x to get rid of this one. So negative 8x equals negative 8. And then hopefully we can divide this out. If we divide both sides by negative 8, x equals positive 1. I almost said negative 1. All right, so here's what we just figured out. We just figured out that the x value for our solution is now 1. We still need to find the y value, but we at least know this. We know that 1 is the x, so now we need to find the y value. So that's where we proceed to, I believe it is step 4. So step 4, our final step, which I'll rewrite some of this so it's a little bit more clear. So here's our original two equations. We have x equals 1 right now. So our job is to take this x value, which is 1, and we're going to substitute it either here in this original equation or here. And my advice would be try to find the easiest route, the easiest path to getting the answer. And I think the bottom equation looks easiest, because if we say y equals and substitute x as 1, all we have to do is 1 minus 9 and we're finished. 1 minus 9 is negative 8. So now there's our y value. But I'll just warn you about this. A lot of times on tests, stuff like that, the answer is going to be written as an ordered pair. So I would just get used to seeing that. I'm sure if you put x equals 1, y equals negative 8, sometimes it won't be a big deal. That'll be fine. But sometimes you'll want to see the answer written as an ordered pair. So I'm going to show you all three. All right, so now let's go to another problem. Let's make things a little bit harder. So 6x minus 5y equals negative 28. And then our second equation is 7x plus y equals 22. So now, see if you can figure out what the first step is. So the first step is we need to isolate an x or a y. We want x equals or y equals, because that's when we can substitute. So if I were you, I would take some time and try to figure out what is the easiest thing to isolate. So if I wanted to isolate 6x, I'm going to have to divide this 6 at some point. 5y, same thing, I'm going to have to divide 5. 7, I'm going to have to divide 7 for 7x. But if you notice, y is all by itself with a coefficient that's understood to be 1, which means I could just subtract 7x on both sides, and I've already isolated y. Now, sometimes you don't have a choice, you just have to choose a route. But my advice to you would be try to find the easiest route. That way you don't waste time doing work you don't really need to do. All right, so now, this original equation, I can pretty much be done with it now. And so now I have y equals negative 7x plus 22. So we can use the same approach as we did before. If y is equal to this, that means this entire expression can be substituted in for this y value up here. So let me rewrite it all out so it's a little bit more clear. So 6x minus 5y equals negative 28. And then we changed our second equation to y equals, we said it was negative 7x plus 22. So once again, we're just doing simple substitution here. We're saying y is equal to this entire expression. So this entire expression is going to replace this y value in the original equation. Well, the top equation. So 6x minus 5. Now, you want to make sure you plug everything into parentheses, and here's why. Once I write down this 5 and then start my parentheses, that means multiplication. And I have two things in that parentheses, or two terms, so that means I'm going to have to distribute. And if you don't write it that way, a lot of people miss the distributing. But we're going to distribute negative 5 to negative 7x and to 22. So 6x plus 35x minus 110 is going to equal negative 28. All right, so now we're going to solve this for x, because if you notice, x is the only thing left in the equation. Now that we've done our substitution, there's only x's, so that's what we're going to solve for. And once again, I'll start this over just so you can see a little bit more clear. This was plus 35x minus 110 equals negative 28. So now we're just solving, once again, the last step was our beginning of a multi-step equation. Now we're just finishing it off. So 41x minus 110 equals negative 28. Then we're going to add 110 to both sides. I believe that gives us 82. So 41x equals 82. Final step is just to divide by 41 on both sides. So x equals 2. So now we know that our x value is 2. So we're going to take this x value 2 and we're going to plug it back into one of our original equations. So we had 6x minus 5y equals negative 28. We're going to say y, I'll actually write the original just so we're on the same page. 7x plus y equals 22. And now over here we can say, okay, x is equal to 2, So I can either replace this x value with 2 or this x value with 2. It doesn't matter. In this case, I'd probably pick the second equation again. So 7 times 2 plus y equals 22. And now you can see we're going to solve for y here. So this would be 14 plus y equals 22. And then we're going to say minus 14 minus 14. So y is equal to, it should be 8. All right, so now we have our two values. And then we would want to write this as an ordered pair, 2, 8. So once again, your job is to know the 4 steps, because if you keep up with the 4 steps, everything else is really just past information. So first you're going to isolate a variable, once again. So isolate x or y. Then you're going to substitute that in. So I'll just write sub. And then 3, we're going to solve. Then 4, we're going to sub in step 3 into an original problem or original equation. And then we'll have both. After we do that, we should have our answer, which is an x and a y.